Welcome to the Play Like a Girl podcast, the podcast where we're all about sharing the real stories of amazing women in sport and business, empowering you to lead to your full potential. Today I have a special one, and I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest, who is Trae McGovern, who is an absolute superstar of an athlete as a human, and I can't wait to delve into your story, Trae. From what I understand is actually the first time that we get to share it, so it's a real honour and privilege, so thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, we've spent some of today talking a bit about Warchope and your life growing up. Could you take us back to that time and give us a bit of a picture of what that was like for you?
Yeah, I can. And we've actually danced today as well, which is great because we've danced to country music and I'm actually a country girl from Warchope, as you said. Also known as Warchope or Timbertown. So, yeah, back in the day, Warchope was known for its logging and the timber mills. So it's not so much like that now, but we still have Timbertown running as an amusement park that people can come and visit on holidays and whatnot. But yeah, that's where I grew up, and it was a typical country girl upbringing, I think, to start with. Rode horses, rode motorbikes, went to the beach with the grandparents, water skied in the Hastings River, and played lots and lots of sport. So I had, parents. My dad, he was the local mechanic and he was in the fire brigade as well, and he was also in a band. So as you'll tell when I speak about my life moving forward, I pretty much took after my dad.
Dots are already connecting, aren't they? Yeah, that makes sense. And
Mum was a stay-at-home mum and looked after us for many years until she returned to work. So that's Warchope for you. Classic
country girl lifestyle, and so sport obviously played a massive role in your life. What was the entry to sport for you?
Yeah, so Warchope was a small town, so any sport that like any trend or any sport that kind of started, I had to have a go at it. So if you kind of look back on my upbringing, I played soccer, I played hockey, like I said, I water skied, surf life saving, touch football. There was just a lot of sport. I think I even gave karate a crack at one stage. But if I could play it, I wanted to have a go at it. But I think my brother started playing soccer when he was younger, and the story goes I would go to soccer training and just dribble the ball around, and I think one of the coaches from my age group saw me kicking the ball around and thought, we should give her a crack. But yeah, girls didn't play back then. So I think I must have said to my parents, that's right, Mum put me in physical culture. And yeah, physical culture wasn't really for me. And so I think I went once or twice, and I must have said, I actually think I want to give soccer a go. But again, girls didn't play soccer back in those days. But for some unknown reason, my parents said, okay. And I kitted up and started playing football in this small country town. And I was the only female playing at that time. So that's how my footballing days started, really.
Do you think that playing with the boys from an early age asked you to be more competitive? Do you think that set you up to want to prove a point in one way or another?
Oh, definitely. Playing with the boys back then, like, you had no choice, right? And then when I actually started playing with women, you could tell the difference of a young kid that's come up through the like playing with boys. But now I think it's a little bit different because the skills and the fitness and the ability of the girls at a younger age now, it's on par. it's still great that they've got mixed competitions, because my daughter Zeta enjoyed playing with the boys. She plays with the girls now, but she often says, I really enjoyed playing with the boys, and boys are really competitive, and it honestly did set me up. I really believe that it did, but I had no choice anyway.
Yeah. So looking back on it now as an adult, it set you up in terms of resilience or that grit or that competitive nature that now is threaded through your entire life.
Yeah. I had to deal with parents on the sidelines as a female player in a boys' comp. I can remember a couple of times in the grand finals, they'd be calling out to me, go back to netball, and I couldn't really understand why they'd be saying that, because I've never played netball. I wouldn't have a clue how to play netball, but they'd say hurtful things. So I had to develop that resilience and not let that steer me away from wanting to play football, because if I had of, if all of us female footballers that have come before the Matildas now had have given up, we wouldn't have the Matildas.
I so resonate with that and think growing up in a family where it was normal to be sporty and normal to be competitive, taunts like you play like a girl don't really hit in the way that they're intended. However, if they had of, a really different outcome could have taken place. I feel glad that we didn't realise that until a later age.
Yeah, I used to think, I'm glad I play like a girl.
Same.
Like, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, watch me. Absolutely, I do. Watch me go, especially playing
it.
against the boys. I found that to be very motivating. Like, you really want to be competitive and be able to keep up and especially beat them.
Yeah, and like I really enjoyed playing with the guys. I'm still friends with a lot of the guys I played with, and it was just a great sense of community. I loved the gala days, and one thing that stood out was that those boys actually stood up for me when they had to, or when there were things said from the sideline. That was kind of empowering to know that young boys knew that was wrong, and they had something to say about it.
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you've shared a story with me from early on in your life. Can you share that with us today?
Yeah, so I guess it's hard to tell my footballing story without telling this childhood part, and it's not an easy part to tell, but it kind of feeds into certain psychosocial things that come up for me later on in my career. So again, I was growing up, normal country kid, happy, loved playing in nature, was always dirty, loved kicking the football around. And there was just this one afternoon, and it was a normal school day. On the way home on the bus, we got to the first stop, and my friends Tammy and Michael got off the bus. The next thing, I just remember Michael waving, and then he disappeared. And it felt like the bus had gone over a speed hump.
Take as much time as you need.
The next thing that I remember is it's never easy. But yeah, the bus driver, he literally jumped from his seat to the ground. I remember that vividly. And then he ran back up the stairs really quickly, and he just said to everybody, whatever you do, just don't look out the back window. And then he was gone again. And that all happened in, seconds. And of course, kids being kids, we all ran to the back window. It's kind of a vision that a little kid shouldn't have to see, but that's stuck with me for the rest of my life. And that's really all I remember of that day. It's kind of like you see this scene and you're trying to process it as a little kid because you've never seen anything like that before, and everything just starts to cave in, like goes dark. And I remember my ears were ringing, and that's it. That was all I could remember, and I don't know how I got home. Like, I've had conversations with my parents since recently, and they've told me things like how I didn't talk for ages after that, which is obviously a trauma response. You just shut down. And it obviously affected my learning at school. But that's what unfortunately happened, and that's what I've had to carry. But the actual next memory I have as a kid is coming home from my first school athletics carnival, and I was out the front of my grandparents' place, and Pop walks up to me and he says, "So how'd you go?" And I just looked at him and I said, "Well, I didn't come second because I'd won everything." And that's where my real sports career started. Like, that's a memory that I remember, because I went on to, become a fairly good 800 metre runner, and, cross country fun runs. I'd go in every runs, like any run that I could, because I loved it, because it was an escape for me, I think. I could get into the flow and really challenge myself and want to beat a time, want to beat a distance, want to feel like I've just pushed my body to the limit. And I used to do that as a really young kid. And other kids my age weren't doing that. Running at that time became a pretty therapeutic thing for me. And it was all, my upbringing from there was all about running and football, really, and my family. And I had no memory of that day, all of that time. I had absolutely no memory of that day.
I see how hard that story is for you to share. It's so raw and still so lives within you. However, you've shared with me that you feel like that's a really important story for you to share and to voice and to be able to reassess, I guess, or really revisit. Why is that something that you feel like now you're ready to share or want to look at a little bit more closely?
Yeah, I think because a lot of people thought that I would go a lot further with my football, but I actually, after the 2000 Olympics, I walked away from the game. And it all boils down to, I was a young 18, 19-year-old. I debuted for my country. I'd moved to Newcastle and obviously was in the Northern New South Wales Intensive Training Centre and was training to be selected to go to the Australian Institute of Sport to be in the running for a selection into the Sydney 2000 Olympics. And there were a lot of people, I suppose, that knew that I deserved to be there, and thought that I'd give it a really good crack. But getting there, it was like being in this pressure cooker for me. Like, I was young, maybe a little bit emotionally immature. I had to move away from all of my teammates, my friends, moved away from my family, moved away from the lifestyle that I was accustomed to, because I liked being able to go down to Merewether and have a surf. And and moving to Canberra, it's cold. I mean, you're from Melbourne, but like, it's cold. And there's no beach to escape to go for walks or surfs. So it was a massive, big change for me. And that the team at the time, a lot of them were a lot older than I was as well. And I was kind of a newer player into the system, into that Australian system. So there were a batch of players that had been playing for a long time within the Matildas. So yeah, it was a massive transition for me, and I probably didn't cope with it as well as I should have. And I remember before I moved, I knew instinctively that I didn't want to go, that I wanted just to wait for a bit. But I had my coach at the time, saying, if you don't go, you'll regret it. But unfortunately, I did go, and I kind of regret that. I kind of feel like I knew in myself that if I had just given it a little bit more time, maybe a year or two, then things would have been different. But the way it all turned out was that I did go, and it was a massive lifestyle change. You get put straight into training 6 days a week, which was the training's next level once you get to that level. It's elite now. You're waking up, you're going to the gym in the morning. I wasn't one of the full scholarship holders as well, so I had to live outside the institute and work to be able to pay rent and bills. So yeah, it was train, work, train, Wednesday nights, game against under 16 teams, boys teams, or the men's teams mostly. And yeah, it was just full on. And I got to a point where I could tell that I was starting to get a little bit stressed. My body was stressed because I was always tired and fatigued. Mentally, I was stressed and emotionally just exhausted. And I think, it just all come to a point one night when I was sitting in the gutter outside my place and it was raining. And I started to have flashbacks of that day. And it was the first time I'd kind of remembered what had happened. And it's really hard to explain, but it's like this movie starts playing in front of you and you re-experience it all over again. So that happened. And I started to think, oh, am I going crazy? Like, did that actually really happen? Because for years I didn't remember. But anyway, it did. And yeah, I didn't really know what to do with that. I didn't know who to turn to. And back in those days, you just didn't have the resources that you do now, which I'm thankful for the players now, but back then you're on your own. And I didn't I think because of what had happened, I was quite a shy person as well, and making it into the national team, people saw that as arrogance, but I've never been an arrogant person. I was just really shy. So to ask someone for help, I didn't know how to. And yeah, I just unraveled, absolutely unraveled. And inevitably I just walked away from the game.
I am a firm believer that there is something to be said for that voice. And I find that so many times it's only on reflection when something has happened that we look back and say, I should have listened. I was given that message for a reason. And I'm curious for you in this situation where the voice has appeared, or you've gotten a message saying you're not ready for this. Do you see that as a message that your body was giving you, maybe you're not ready for this, or there's something in this that's going to be scary? How do you reflect on that now?
There was just something so deep inside me that was saying, this is not going to be good for you. You're not ready for this type of pressure because you've not dealt with something, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. It was just something. But then I kind of think, well, if I didn't go and that didn't happen, it would have just happened somewhere else whilst I was doing something different. So it was going to happen anyway. And I think that's where I'm at a point now where I do mentor young athletes, because I never ever want any young athlete to feel alone like I did. And I know you've shared your story with me today, and there was a time where you never wanted an athlete to have to go through, what you've been through. And so we're quite similar in that way. And that's where we get to this point where we're mature now and we're like, okay, how can we make a difference? And for me, yes, I've been through a crappy time, let's be honest. Should have been the time of my life, but it wasn't. So how do I empower myself to empower others? And it's through looking at what am I passionate about? Well, I like listening to people. I like offering guidance. I like sharing my story that may help just one person. And I love football. I love sport. I love women's sport. I love fashion. So I'm just trying to bring that all together and make sure that I can create a legacy for my two little girls, where if they choose to be sportswomen, then I know they're going to be protected and looked after. And I want to be a part of that. And I want to be the part where you're seen because you can't be what you can't see. And now we've got fantastic female athletes out there doing a fantastic job, inspiring our young girls to be like them. So there's a lot of work to do in this space, and I want to be a part of it.
We've spoken today about how some of the things that have happened previously have now enabled the Matildas to have what they have and to be the inspiration they are for this country and worldwide. Yeah. How do you sort of reflect on some of those really important moments, or what are some of those really important moments that have been significant or really defining that have enabled this? Because I really want to get to how it feels to see the Matildas in the position that they are and the contribution that you had to that along the way.
Yeah, well, there's 40 years of history behind the Matildas now, and there's stories of team members being handed their badge at the airport where they've had to sew it on their own tracksuit. That wasn't my era. My era was more about having to wear the big, baggy, large men's kits.
Yep.
You look back now and you go, that's terrible. But one of the defining moments, I believe, would be the Matildas calendar. And I asked Alana Kennedy in December last year whether she knew about it, and she didn't even know about it. So would people have known who the Matildas are if that calendar didn't come out? That's up for debate, but it was definitely a time right before the 2000 Olympics where people definitely started talking about us. And yeah, so that kind of come about, not sure whose idea it was, but it was put to the team, and I decided to put my hand up for it.
So for anyone who's listening who hasn't, if you've seen the calendar, you'll never forget it. If you haven't seen it, could you talk to us about the moment or when they came in to ask you? Could you tell us how that was delivered and your response in the first place, and then what actually encouraged you to say, yes, I want to be part of this?
Yeah, I think we were in a team meeting, to be honest, if my memory serves correct. But yeah, it was just an idea that was put to us. We needed to get the brand out there. We needed to fill seats at the Olympics. So they were the objectives. And, you know, we weren't the first team or athletes to do this, but I think I think Jane Fleming, there was a few athletes that had done it prior. But yeah, we went in as a team, so that was a little bit different, I guess, and made that full calendar. But yeah, we had enough people that put their hands up to want to do it, so it was all guns blazing from there. On the day, it was at the Institute of Sport auditorium. They had the stage set up. We had no idea what we were in for, let's be honest. We were just told to bring a robe, and that's pretty much it. That's all we needed. We went in, we had our hair done, makeup done, and then it was game on. So we individually would do a shoot, and then we didn't know this at the time, but they asked us to come back, and we all had to have the team shot. And it was pretty funny because we're all like, we've been in the dressing sheds with each other for years, you know, showering, whatnot. But this, I don't know what was different, but we're all kind of got a little bit shy. And so we've all got our robes on, and they got us into position, and then they're like, okay, take them off. So we're all kind of standing there very awkwardly, pulling our robes off and throwing them off to the side, and had that famous team shot taken. But
and it's more than a raunchy calendar. It's a full nude, right?
Full nude. Well, I don't know. They just said it would be a naked shoot, and I can't even remember putting too much thought to it.
Yeah.
I just knew that I wanted to do it. I wanted to be a part of it. And back to your question, the reason why.
Yeah.
I honestly, like, growing up, being a footballer, I looked different. I looked a little bit different. I had the big football butt and the strong legs, and you know, even people that I thought were friends would say, "Oh, your legs are too muscly," and kind of made me a little bit shy about my body. And so when this opportunity come up, I'm like, oh, I'm actually proud of my athletic body, and I want to show it off. And that was the reasoning behind it. I wanted to show that you could be feminine but fit.
Love it.
So again, there's this piece of history that has so much more meaning behind it, and it's paved a way for now women can go to the gym, can look athletic, can look strong, and not be called butch because of it.
Yeah, a body that should absolutely be celebrated.
Yeah.
they don't just happen on their own. There is a lot of work that goes into those bodies.
There is a lot of work that goes into those bodies. I actually love the process of turning your body into that. It's a process. Yeah. And not to mention that it's really, really good for you. You know, science says you just got to keep your body moving and be active.
And what was the response like from the calendar? And were you surprised by any of the responses?
I think we were quite surprised at how big it become, to be honest. And yeah, obviously there was a divide. There was even a divide within the team. But I just remember being respectful of other people's opinions, and I get it. Like, we shouldn't have had to have gotten naked. Nobody should have. But there were also male athletes that were doing it as well, and they were from sports that were lesser known. But it was just something that the Olympic athletes would do leading up to an Olympics at that time. I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed the media attention afterwards, and it definitely hit the objectives on the head, I think.
Yeah, you got the outcome.
We got the outcome.
Were known.
It's just a little piece of history that you either know about or you don't.
Yeah.
But I think most people know about it.
It's a good conversation to have and to hear it from you, because I think there can be an assumption, and the conversation or debate is going, well, we want to appreciate female athletes for their athleticism and not objectify them or focus on their sexuality or how they look, and not appreciate them only for that. But in this case, what you're saying is, I'm not powerless in this scenario. I chose this. I'm proud of my physique. I'm proud of what I've built, and I really like how it came out. So you can make all the judgments in the world that you like, or how it came about, but you're sitting here saying, I loved it. It was great. There was a clear outcome for me, and we got it. So job done.
Yeah. Well, you know me well enough now.
I do now.
You know that I'd do it tomorrow.
Yeah, we've had a great day in front of the camera today. There is no shyness around here. You mentioned that the calendar's probably one of the things after the years after that was released. That was the thing you always got asked about. We're in the calendar, and no one ever asks you about what position you play on field, and
never.
No. So let's do that. So you started your career in a different place where you ended up towards the back end of your career. Talk us through that transition. What's your favourite position?
So obviously when I played with the boys, and then when I started playing schoolgirls, and even with the Northern ITC, I was always a right winger, right flank. So attacking, I was quick. I could knock a ball across pretty well, and I could throw the ball just as far as Ellie Carpenter. All right.
You hear that?
Ding. So there was that. And then when it come to the Matildas, they decided, because I was tall and pretty strong, that they'd put me in as a central defender. I'd never, ever played defence in my life. So, that was a little bit uncomfortable to start with. You had to learn the whole new role. So it was difficult. That kind of probably added to the stress. But it was, I kind of went from being able to score goals to having to stop them. I enjoyed both positions, but central defender is what I had to play with the Matildas.
Now, your connection with the Matildas, you're involved with the alumni and involved in the Trailblazers movie's about to come out, which talks to the history of the Matildas. What's your connection like now with the alumni and Matildas more generally?
The World Cup last year really brought us all back together. No one expected that to happen, the Matilda effect. I had been going to a few Matilda matches pre-COVID, and you could see the difference of the crowds. But when we got to Melbourne and we played that farewell match against France, I remember there's a photo of me and one of my Matilda alumni friends. The photos from behind us, and we've got our arms around each other, and we're just looking out at Marvel Stadium that everyone had left. the beautiful, like the roof that's over the top. It's a beautiful stadium, and we're just looking ahead. And I just remember that moment. We kind of looked at each other and just went, "This is going to be huge. I can feel something. Don't know what it is again, but this is going to be huge." There's that gut instinct. And so during the World Cup, we would have pre-match functions for the Matilda alumni where we'd all get together. And to be honest, it was a really healing time for a lot of us, because the 40 years leading up to now, there was a lot that happened in there. And it wasn't all great. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't all great, you know. And like I've spoken about, there, a lot of us had to play with boys. We had to wear men's kits. We had to sew our own badges on our tracksuits. We had to play on the backfields. There was all of that going on. So to all come together after 20 plus years, you can only imagine. And the environment that we're in, you know, we rock up to this stadium and there's 75, 80,000 people, and they're all there for the Matildas. And we're like sitting there going, we never thought we'd be alive to see this. It's amazing. And one of the matches in Newcastle, Matildas versus Brazil, Sam Kerr scored a cracker. She did her famous backflip. The crowd went wild. I remember that match, and I went to the hotel where the Matildas were staying after the match, and I ended up catching up briefly with Emily Van Egmond, and I said, "How does it feel, like, this crowd?" And it was like she couldn't really believe what was happening. Like, her response was like, "Yeah." Like, they were in their own little bubble. They couldn't see what was coming, I don't think. But we could. And yeah, so again, the World Cup, you just could not have asked for a better experience. And it was like all the holes in the cheese just lined up for that to happen, and for the country to get on the bandwagon. Because we're a sporting country, right? We love when an Australian athlete or an Australian team is doing well on the international arena, and we just all jump on it, don't we?
We do, absolutely.
And that's what's happened. And like I ended up in a car with going home from one of the matches with Danny Roach, she's former Hockey-roo, and Dee Anderson, who, you know, is a great mentor to some great big names in sport. And we're all kind of like, it's like COVID happened and we weren't allowed to touch each other or go near each other, and this World Cup for the first time brought everyone back together. When Steph Catley scored that first goal against Ireland and the crowd just went, I had my, poor Zeta, I had my 10-year-old daughter sitting on my lap, and everyone went that way, and I went with the crowd, and she got tossed off my off my lap. I momentarily forgot she was there. I just was in the moment, and I actually caught it on film. So we have a really big laugh about that, and my two girls will never ever forget that. They'll never ever forget that. It's part of history, and it's part of their history, their upbringing, and they'll always talk about that game where there was so many people in this big stadium, and Mum, when Steph Catley scored, tossed me off her lap.
That is a classic. How did having two daughters of your own change your perspective, or did it change your perspective on sport and life, having the girls?
Yeah, it did, because, and it's the reason why I started the Australian Sportswoman, because when Zay was young, all I wanted to do was take her to sport, to women's sport, and I'd jump online and you just couldn't find anything. you'd have to like really search within a sports page and then go deep, like underground, to find anything about the women. So I started the Australian Sportswoman at the time, where I pulled all the events and put it in a central spot where people could go to and go, I want to see what's on with the Matildas or the AFLW or the NRLW, etc. And they could go there and find out. That's how it started. How it ends or how it goes on from now, I'm still building on that, but I want to create a legacy for my little girls. It's important to me, especially Zeta does love sport. She's a sprinter and she's a footballer. Evie, I haven't got her into sport yet. She wants to be a dancer. So I'm struggling with sports mum, dance mum. I don't think I can be a dance mum. Have you ever watched that show?
I have watched that show. I'm not getting brutal. That vibe from you.
It's brutal. I most definitely enjoy being on the sidelines and coaching football. I'm very comfortable with doing that. But yeah, no, it's important that I create something where my girls can be proud of me.
Beautiful. Proudest moments, a couple of proudest moments for us.
I suppose my debut in Lismore against China in 1997 with my family there was obviously a proud moment. I came on as a sub and all I focused mentally on was make sure your first pass goes to one of our players.
Good. Narrow the focus, just get that pass.
Just don't do a dodgy pass. I remember I actually received the ball and I looked up and I could see Lisa Casagrande, I think it was, and I played this magnificent ball through and I went, okay, job done. I can relax.
I'm done here. That's it.
I can relax now. My debut was definitely one of those moments. Obviously, birth of my children is significant in my life, and I think the work that we're doing now in the space of sportswear with Classic and sports corpwear, what we're trying to achieve in empowering women, I think I'm already proud of what we've achieved, and we've only just begun, really.
Haven't we just?
We have.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
I'm curious from the Trailblazers film is about to release, that's about to drop. What are you hoping are the sort of key messages that come from that or that people take away from it?
Yeah. The key message is that there's been 40 years beforehand. There's a lot of history there. There's a lot of stories. There was a lot of inequality. And we hope that this shines a light on all of that and really shows where the Matildas have come from and where they are now. And then maybe that together will kind of paint a little bit of a picture of what we can look forward to in the future with the next generation coming through that now understands the history, now understands the pride, understands the journey, understands the sacrifices, and wants to be a part of that next generation of Australian footballers.
I feel like we've barely scratched the surface, but I think for our first opportunity to sit down and learn a bit about you, it's been so, you've been so generous in what you've shared and the way that you've shared it. I know it hasn't been easy, and I'm really grateful and glad that I've been able to sit here with you and relish in your lessons and your truth and your inspiration and all of the above. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to doing it again in the future.
Yes, definitely. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the offer.